Hi, seventh graders. Today you should have your guided notes for lesson 1, the geography of Greece. And under the I can statement, you can just write in, I can identify the geographical regions and agriculture of ancient Greece. So we're going to be looking at some of the geography of Greece, such as mountains and bodies of water, and really tie that in into how that influenced the agriculture of Greece so that they could grow as a civilization. Okay, so let's take a look at where Greece is. So, if we think about where Greece is, we're going to take a look. We've been studying some other civilizations, mostly in Northern Africa when we talked about Egypt, the Middle East when we looked at Mesopotamia, and then we went over to India when we looked at the Indus Valley, and then China with those River Valley civilizations there. Well, ancient Greece is a little bit different. We are now going to move up to the southern part of Europe up here, and that's where ancient Greece is located. So this will be the first of the more European civilizations that we take a look at. Now, I'd like you to pause for a minute and just notice what you see here and jot down what do you think are some pros and cons of being located right here. So maybe just jot down one of each, and when you're ready, you can resume the video. All right, welcome back. We are going to now take a look at 3 main parts of ancient Greece. Now, before we start that, I just want to point out that if we look at a general map, you might know that Italy is that boot. And that's a great way to identify where Greece is because it's just to the east of the boot. So if you can find the boot, you can find Italy, then you can find Greece because it's just to the east. And it looks a bit like this. All right, so if we look at this close-up right here, the 3 main parts of Greece that we're going to be looking at are, first of all, the mainland. And the mainland is kind of what it sounds like. It's attached to Europe. It's the main area, and it has the most population. As you can see, it probably has the biggest area of land, and so does have the most population. The second area of Greece is this one, and it's called Peloponnese. And Peloponnese is a peninsula. While it might look like a big island, it is attached to the mainland, as you can see here. And there are lots and lots of mountains in both of these areas, but the Peloponnese is mostly covered in mountains. And then the third main part are these over here, the islands. So all of these little things are the Greek islands, and that is a part of the geography of Greece as well. Okay, next we've got the mountains, and we're going to again talk about 3 different mountain ranges. Now, as you take a look at this map, this is a topographical map, and the darker shows the higher areas of land. So again, you can see that this mainland is mostly covered by these mountains, hills and mountains. It's pretty rocky. The Peloponnese is a lot of mountains and rocky area. So kind of keep that in mind as we're talking about the mountains. So the first set of mountains is on mainland Greece, and these are called the Pindus Mountains. They're quite a large mountain range. In fact, they are the largest mountain range in Greece, and they run, along the length, sort of the west part of the mainland. Next, we've got the Taygetus Mountains, and that is in the southern part of the Peloponnese. That's where most of the people live. Now, notice again, there's lots of mountains here, but we're focusing in on this Taygetus Mountains because that's where most of the people will be living. And then finally, there's this right here. It's not a mountain range like the other 2. It is a mountain. So right here is Mount Olympus. And it's important in the fact that Mount Olympus is where they thought their gods lived, and it was a pretty big cultural element of ancient Greece. And so, while it's not a mountain range, it is an important feature to the culture of ancient Greece. All right, some other important physical features are the seas. So there really are 3 main seas that we're going to be looking at. First of all, the Ionian Sea. And the Ionian Sea is on that rocky kind of western side of the mainland and the Peloponnese area. Then we've got the Aegean Sea, and the Aegean Sea is to the east. So it's kind of on the east side of that mainland and Peloponnese. And then the third main sea is the Mediterranean. Now, interestingly enough, the Mediterranean Sea, which you may have heard of, the Ionian and the Aegean are part of the Mediterranean Sea. The only reason that they're designated is to help you locate things. So if we said, okay, we're sailing along in the Mediterranean Sea and we were talking about this area here, it's easier to say and it's clearer if you say they were in the Ionian Sea. So especially if we're talking about trade or battles, you can know which direction they're coming from. So that Ionian and Aegean are all a piece of the Mediterranean Sea. So what is the land used for? Well, it's interesting because the portion that's unusable is 80%. So think about that. If you looked at all the mountains, it's so rocky, there's not a lot of soil, and they can't really do much. So over 80% or about 80% is unusable land. So it's almost incredible that such a great civilization rose up in Greece. And obviously, if 80% is unusable, then 20% is usable. So they can only grow a few specific crops that can grow in that rocky kind of soil. And we'll take a look at that next. So the types of crops, there are 4 that we're going to look at. First of all, olives. Now, olives, they were used to eat, of course, but also to make olive oil. And that olive oil, because they could grow so many olives with those crops, it was great for trade. And that was the same with grapes. So grapes was another crop. They were used to make wine, which was useful at the time. It was great for trade as well. Now, a third type of crop that they could grow, is wheat. Now, when we typically think of wheat, we probably think of bread, but wheat was primarily used to feed livestock or animals in ancient Greece. What they used to make their bread more was barley, and that was used to make these things called barley cakes. So that was more of what their grain was, or what their bread type of thing was. Think of like a rice cake. It was sort of like that. All right, and then finally, types of animals. First of all, we've got sheep. Now, sheep were used for meat. That's what lamb is, and also for wool, so to make clothing. But they were animals that were able to graze on that rocky terrain, as well as goats. Goats were also able to graze on that rocky terrain, and they were used for goat milk and to make cheese. So these were some plentiful animals, but the most plentiful was fish. And if you think about it, it was the most common food in Greece because of all the seas that they were around. It was served fresh or salted, but fish was a big type of animal that they would eat. Now, pigs, interestingly, were also used for meat, but they were also sacrificed to the gods. So this again ties kind of back into that Mount Olympus and the mountains and the belief in gods. Pigs were really a part of cultural Greece. All right, let's wrap it up. So 2 things that I want you to think about and answer. The first are, what do you think the top 5 words would be to describe the geography of Greece? And you're going to just think of 5 words and write those in the spaces in your wrap up. And then secondly, how do you think this geography might affect the future of Greece? So we're talking ancient times. They're able to settle here, think about what you learned, and how do you think it's going to affect the future? And there you have it, the geography of Greece.